Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with Carl. I'm, of course, your host, Carl Zoellner, one of the senior attorneys with Anderson Business Advisors. If you haven't already, please remember to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Always helps to grow, and it always helps to let us know what we're doing here is appreciated with the free education. If you would please do that, it'd be much appreciated. Let's see from carrying forward from the last video. So last video, we talked about the traditional view for your structure. And that's, like I said, it's more the funnel perspective where everything funnels down into the living trust. Today, we're going to talk about a version that is sort of flipped over here. So I'll pull that up and we can go from there. So now you can see the living trust, if you can take a close look, is more at the top of the picture for you. I'll zoom in a little bit where I can. There you go. So it's right up in here. Let's see. So this is actually, and I decided to actually do this little mini series because when I first started with Anderson, this is how it worked in my mind, that the living trust was more of sort of the umbrella of the overall structure. And it works the same. You'll notice from between the flipped version and the traditional version, that the arrows, of course, are pointing in a different direction, just because, like I said, this one is more kind of the umbrella, or as Toby sometimes will describe it when he presents in person, sort of if you think of it like a suitcase, it sort of encompasses everything as well, but the concept is still the same. We want the living trust to ultimately own everything, so it gets passed on to our beneficiaries or heirs in such a way that it's tax efficient, as well as that we have the ability to change it as many times as we need to. Whether you view it the traditional way or the flipped way in your head, the same concepts apply as far as the living trust is the tool that's out there that avoids probate, which is the main benefit, as well as there's all sorts of little ancillary benefits, but that's kind of the main one that we focus on. Ultimately, no matter which place you see it, whether it's at the top or the bottom, just realize it's intended to encompass everything from your personal residence to your business assets, to your brokerage accounts, things like that. It all goes in the living trust at the end of the day. And end of the day is basically what I'm talking about. If you or when you and your spouse both pass, everything goes to a living trust. And then living trust dictates whether it's a legacy trust where the assets are held and the income is distributed, or if it is just a more traditional dispensing of the assets to the beneficiaries. So just as a FYI and quick little refresher there. But yeah, this view that you're seeing on this video shows the living trust at the top, like I mentioned, that umbrella or sort of a briefcase or suitcase type scenario that everything goes in. And then the traditional one is more that funnel, more common one, I should say, that funnel perspective where everything flows down to the bottom. But same, like I said, same concepts and same reasonings apply between the two. It's really just more of a how do you see it perspective. And I'll also ask you to note on this flipped one as well, where you see things show up like a personal residence privacy trust or other types of land trusts for, say, like rental real estate in Florida. Those will also show up in this you'll see in the next one is actually a siloed approach that I've just sort of done the same things, but organized from sort of a tax perspective over the sort of individual boxes flowing to different places perspective. So yeah, that's that. So ultimately on here, you'll notice as well, there's holding companies like we had on the last one. This one actually has two because in a lot of cases, it makes a lot of sense to have one that is sort of handles and is attached to real estate like here. And then the other one is more liquid assets like brokerage accounts, savings accounts, things like that, because it can be protected and separate. And in a state like Wyoming, where it's relatively cheap to maintain a business entity, that's a good option, especially if you start getting into a level where you're uncomfortable having so many eggs in one basket. You might as well set up a separate holding company so those things are completely disinterested from each other. And next logical question usually is, well, where do we go? Like, what is the level, or when do we consider that? tend to have that conversation with my clients at about 250K in assets, just so you can sort of break up the potential liability issue. And so then, yeah, that's kind of just a rule of thumb, though. You could do it at any time. And like I said, with the reasonable cost of maintenance in Wyoming, there's a pretty good argument to do it at any level. You start to feel uncomfortable because it's $62 a year to maintain that entity in Wyoming. Not such a big deal to protect even things, even down to say 50, 25,000 potentially. It's like I said, it's really more personal preference at that point. But yeah, I intentionally flag things for a separate holding company when I see them in your strategy session questionnaire when you have your individual consult. And so just something to, I guess, keep in mind there as well. If you're not already an Anderson client, my suggestion is to, number one, sign up for an individual consultation. The attorneys and the advisors are excellent, and they'll put together a visual depiction for you as well, because everybody's situation is a little bit different. And so some of these pieces that made sense for me when I first did that have certainly changed, because this is actually one of my first versions of my own entity structures. And then, like I said, it's changed. As one of those changes, I can tell you, there's you see the Florida LLC in there. That one actually has a land trust associated with it, just because basically any issue you run into in Florida for real estate, most cases a land trust is sort of where that issue starts to be resolved, because you can put the property in it and it's exempts transfer from stamp taxes and things like that in most cases. Also, reassessments and things are usually avoided in Florida with a land trust. So like I said, I'm showing you sort of a piece of an update. That rental LLC in Florida would also have a land trust and a deed and a nominee trustee that would show up on there as well. So just as an FYI. Also, anybody kind of looking at this and thinking it's a current version and having some malicious intent, best of luck to you, because like I said, this is not the current setup, does not show my current ownership of things. This is, like I said, sort of an older one I thought was more appropriate to use for my Coffee with Carl video example, just because ultimately it cut down on me having to get, client to sign off on approval to disclose different information. So in this case, I'm it's like the Hair Club for Men. Not only am I somebody who's talking about the services, but I'm also a user. Not ironically enough, not with Hair Club for Men, right? I mean, as you can all see, but yeah. Sort of this is, like I said, this was more practical just to use my own old structure than give you the newest one, or also, provide to clients, because ultimately I don't need to disclose client information. And quite frankly, I can't as a fiduciary as well as an attorney. So that's the idea there is, I'll share. I don't mind. We'll ask you during your individual consultation to share personal details about yourself. So I don't really particularly mind doing it a little bit as well. And like I said, mostly because number one is this structure is pretty much wholly outdated at this point, considering I even got married in the interim. So it's no longer a single living trust currently. And it had a son. So that certainly changes things as far as beneficiaries and things I've had drafted and updated in my trust as well. Just from a perspective though, like I said, really the lessons I'm trying to look at here are, if you're one of those folks who envision the living trust at the top of your entity structure, this is what that would look like versus what you probably got if you met with me or any of the other advisors or attorneys as well. Because the traditional one is the most common one at this point. And then, like I said, if you just flip it over, basically, if you view it that way, hopefully that will help sort of illustrate those points as well for you. But ultimately, this is and then there's a third one, another video in this series coming out, which is, like I said, a completely different approach than's ever been, as far as I know, has ever been presented at an Anderson event or on a consult, except for the few that I've done where we're kind of bumping our heads against the wall with both traditional and flipped. And so that next video, as I mentioned, will show that other approach, which I just call the silo approach, because I just basically the same visual depiction that would ultimately look like I said, it'll look different, but the concepts are the same, and that different LLCs for different assets. Plus, here's how I would organize it from sort of a tax perspective, depending on the different types of businesses you're doing, because the taxation on some of these things or not some of these things, but all of these things are crucial to have this thing, running as smoothly and as efficiently as possible from both a protection and a tax perspective. So, yeah, I guess the ultimate message is tune in for the next video, because there'll be more information in a third perspective on how to look at your overall entity structure. And then, we can go from there. But yeah, ultimately, like I said, the different views tend to clear up some different ambiguities that are in people's minds. And then, like I mentioned as well, the biggest piece is ultimately, if you're already a client and you're a platinum client and you have questions, reach out. We're happy to answer those for you. If you're not a platinum client yet or not a client yet, keep taking advantage of the free content and join us for some online or in-person classes when we're in your area or when you're online anytime. And then you'll also get that benefit as well to hear other people explain it, because sometimes it's not even the picture or how the picture's organized. Sometimes we just need to hear it in a different way to really grasp the concepts. So yeah, like I mentioned as well, if you're not already a client, then I would suggest at least having that initial consult so you can get a visual depiction of what you're doing, because it will be slightly different than anybody else's, even if you're doing the same type of activities, just because every little facts and details, facts and circumstances change the overall picture. So yeah, just be aware of that piece as well. But yeah, this is, like I said, so this is the flipped perspective you're looking at now. And I'll just scroll back up so you can see the living trust at the top. And then, as I mentioned before, the traditional side, more of the funnel system, and the living trust comes down here at the bottom. So once again, thank you for joining me for this episode of Coffee with Carl. I look forward to seeing y'all on the next one, where we go over the third visualization or perspective on your overall structure. So thank you to everyone for tuning in on this one. And just as a quick reminder to like and subscribe and share with a friend, so ultimately we can keep continuing to build this free content for you and show you some additional value to the already immense value we give in free education. So yeah, please, like I said, like, subscribe if you haven't already, and share with a friend. So thank you all so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode.